Hello there, this is Cole, the Feezer, coming to you from my friendly local game store, Let's Play Games and Hobbies. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, published by Garfield Games, designed by Shem Phillips, with artwork by the Miko. I just the other week got this from Kickstarter. I had backed it. I don't normally back Garfield Games' games, just because I work in a friendly local game store and have ready and easy access to all the games in that way. Yes, I am having to wait a little longer. It was actually a bit refreshing to get this copy a fair bit in advance of when we'll be able to get it here in stores, so that was kind of nice. I'm able to enjoy it more readily than the masses currently can, if you will. That being said, I've played this one a fair bit by this point, and so I'm here today to share my thoughts on this particular game. But before we get to my thoughts on the game, I want to send it over to the table where I will hopefully give a brief overview of how the game is played, so that you'll hopefully have a decent understanding when I go ahead and share my thoughts after the fact. So, alrighty. This is Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux by Garfield Games. This is a card game with some tableau building, engine building, resource management, and a closed draft added in. So this is a game that takes roughly, it's for 1 to 5 players, takes roughly 60 minutes, and is played out over 5 easy rounds. Those 5 easy rounds are tracked by this small deck of cards here. The first one denoting the first round has been flipped over already. So each round you're going to have several phases. You're going to start with the draft, then you're going to have your actions phase, and then you're going to have your gain income, and then you're going to have your hero assessment, which I'll get to all of those in a moment. So, like I said, this is largely a card game, and you're going to start by drafting cards from this fat deck of cards here. There are 5 main types of cards as laid out here that you will come across, not counting the ones you start with, but we've got ships, we've got buildings, we've got craftspersons, we've got townsfolk, and we've got jarls. Ships are going to be one of the main ways that you will earn points in this game. Points noted in the gold banners in the upper right hand corner. And any cards that have, anywhere you see that gold banner, if you will, or yellow, whatever color suits you, that's gonna mean points at the end of the game. In the upper left-hand corner for ships, you've got some amount of icons that you will be required to have via craftspersons, a concept that you'll be familiar with if you've ever played Architects of the West Kingdom. Below that, you'll have some cost in resources and workers, and then below that, you'll have a benefit that you either get immediately, like additional workers with the skip spat here, or points at the end of the game, like you have here with the NAR. Buildings, again, they'll have some kind of a resource cost, and then when you put them out, they'll go below your board, and they'll give you additional worker placement spots that you can then put workers on and get additional resources and benefits as the game goes on. We have craftspersons that can either be put on your board to then be used for their icons when building ships, or they can be tucked under buildings so that you have them to use every time, because craftspersons that are on your board, they're a one-time spend. Craftspersons tucked under your cards are an always available spend. You can also instead put townsfolk under your buildings, and that'll just enhance the worker placement spots on those buildings. Like, you put a worker there, do a thing, and then you might be able to spend something else, like another worker or another resource, and gain additional benefits. We also have jarls. You can tuck a jarl instead, and they will typically get you points at the end game, as well as advancements up on the track, much like most buildings, and all ships will do in advancing you up the tracks. Those are the 5 main types of cards that you'll come across. You also have a starting ship and a starting building, as well as your laborer. And those are kind of special. Your starting ship will get you a benefit during the gain income phase. In this case, you will get a worker that is common to everyone. You have a building. That building will get you some kind of a benefit for putting a worker there, and that's variable amongst the players, as well as start you one space up on a track. That is unique. That is variable amongst the players as well. And then you have the labor, which is consistent across all players, that you can spend a card and a gold to ignore one of those icons on a ship. So that would be one less craftsperson you would need to have, which, given the thickness of this deck, you're probably not always going to see the cards you need when you need them, if you will. So that's a way to help mitigate that, if you will. In terms of resources that you would have to spend, we've got workers, we've got wood, we've got sheep, we've got stone, we've also got gold, and we've also got silver that you can spend, but ships and buildings will never require silver as a direct cost. Silver is mostly useful for making trades, and we have the round cards here that also dictate what trades are available to you each round. So, for example, in this round, you can spend 2 silver to get a wood or a stone, or you can spend 3 silver to get a sheep. So, I mean, that's just that you have available to you. And so, like I said, you'll start off, you'll be drafting these cards. You'll end up with 6 of them. And then you're going to do whatever you can with those cards. And you have to do something with all the cards. You can't keep them from round over round. And I know what you're thinking. Well, if I can't keep them, what happens if I'm left with a card that I either can't fit on my board or I can't afford the cost of? Well, good. They thought of that. Every card in the bottom right-hand corner has a white X on a red background that says, discard this card and get the benefit printed above. Whether it is gaining any one of the resources or workers or cards, whatever the case may be, you can always, if nothing else, discard the card and get whatever it says to get. So there is something you can always do with all the cards, so you can ensure that you never have any at the end of the round. And so we do all that we can, and that's simultaneous at that point, so that really helps with the speed of play right there. So everyone's simultaneously doing whatever they can with their cards, and then we move on to the next phase after that, which is to say gain the income. So any workers that you've put on worker placement spots, you get those back. Any workers you've spent on ships and buildings, though, you do not get those back. Those are permanent spends. So you're kind of having to really manage your workers in that way. It can be tight at times, for sure. Then we have the hero assessment, and that's the thing. Before we can get to that, I need to now talk about this track, or tracks, if you will. There's 3 of them, and they can absolutely matter. I can tell you right now, you're lucky if you get to the top of one track, and if you think, oh, I'm going to get to the top of all 3, not going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now. But there are some special spots on each of these 3 tracks. There's the 4, the 8, and the 12 spots that earn you a benefit when you get there on those tracks. And then when you get to 15 and beyond, you're getting points at the end of the game. Now, each of the tracks, though, you get different benefits when you move up them. So for the red track, when you get to the 4, 8, and 12 spot, you get to draw a card, you get to draw a settlement off this deck here. Settlements are just another way you can spend workers to gain resources, and if you've gotten to the 12 spot, you'll have 3 of these cards, and you don't have to pay workers to raid these, so that's just, you've got a solid engine at that point. Congratulations. If you get far enough on the blue tracks, you get to draw a card from this deck here, and this card will let you do one of 2 things. You can tuck it to have additional income benefits during the 3rd phase of every round, or you can immediately discard it and gain the resources shown at the top of the card. So if it's early in the game, maybe you want to tuck it. If it's later in the game, you can discard it for resources. And side note, when tucking, it goes under a ship that doesn't already have a card tucked under it, and each ship, just like every building, can only have 1 card tucked underneath it. And then as for the track at the bottom here, if you get to the 4, 8, or 12 spot, you get to upgrade one of your starting cards. You'll know that because there's an icon in the upper left-hand corner of those cards that matches the icon on the board. And so, yeah, if you upgrade your starting ship, you get an extra worker and now points at the end of the game. If you upgrade your starting building, you get additional benefits when you send a worker there, as well as points at the end game. And if you upgrade your labor, you get points at the end game, as well as not having to discard that card as well. So you would only have to spend the gold to make up for an icon that you don't have. Then that being said, when we get to the final phase of the round, the hero assessment, We're also going to look at each of the 3 tracks, and whoever is furthest on a given track will get one of these heroes, depending which track they're furthest on. Furthest on the red track gets this hero, furthest on the blue gets this hero, and furthest on the bottom track gets this hero. If you don't earn any of these heroes in a given round, you just get one of these Randy heroes. It's just a basic benefit that you have that's perpetual round over round, much like these are perpetual as well, so you can benefit from them again and again and again, as long as you have them. And I say as long as you have them because at the end of the next round, you do the assessment again, and if you're no longer furthest on that given track, you don't get to keep that hero. And yes, you will do that assessment at the final round as well, because any of these heroes that you have at the end, these 3 special ones rather, you will earn points for them as well. So like I said, that is Shipwrights of the North Sea. It is a closed drafting game, if you will, played out over 5 rounds. And that's pretty much it. So let's take it on back for my final thoughts. Welcome back. So, now that we've got the overview out of the way, I can go ahead and let you know my thoughts on Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux. So, if you're unaware, this is my first recorded review ever. Not my first review ever. I've written probably a dozen reviews at this point, all posted to BGG, as far as I'm aware. So, if you want to know my thoughts on other games, you can follow me on there. That's where I'll typically post things. I don't know what I'm going to do for this one, if I will just leave this as the video, or if I'll also transcribe this in some way and post it on BGG. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. But here we are. I'm trying something new. Hopefully you like it. Let me know down below. Maybe. We'll see. But anyways, I should get on with it. Shipwrights of the North Sea. It's an interesting game. One that I very much enjoy. I would argue that it's unlike anything else that Garfield has done recently. A lot of what they do now is like heavier Euros with a lot of worker placement and resource management and engine building and things like that. I think what really sets this one apart, though, is that it is all cards with some resources in between as facilitators. But yeah, it is all cards and it is card drafted. And I do like me a good card drafter. I like Seven Wonders. I've played It's a Wonderful World, and I have mixed feelings about that game. I can fully see where it is a good game. I'm just not good at it. I played it like almost a dozen times now, and I've never won a game. I feel like there is something that I am fundamentally doing wrong. I don't know what that is, but it wouldn't be the most unreasonable thing either, because the first time I played this, I got destroyed. I played it solo, and the solo Automa AI, whatever you want to call it, had nearly double my score, and I'm like, wow, this is bad. I feel like I've done something fundamentally wrong to be this far behind. And I don't remember all the particulars of that game, but knowing what I know now, I can absolutely understand that to be the case, because when that game was over, I was like, surely this can't be a bad game. I know Shem Phillips, I know Garfield games. They don't make bad designs necessarily. They know what they're doing. I mean, so there had to be something I'm missing. And I say that especially because this is the Redux version. Because, yeah, this game came out over 10 years ago, back in 2014, and it's now 2024, and this game is dropping on its 10th anniversary, if you will. But this is a Redux, which means if the original was bad, then surely they've taken what was bad and made it good, and so now this should be good. I can't imagine that they would take something bad and just continue to leave it as bad. And to be clear, I'm not saying that Shipwrights was bad. I mean, some people look at it as the weakest link in the medieval trilogies, and I can understand that, but I'm not here to draw comparisons to that one, especially because I haven't played that one in a long time, so I quite frankly don't remember much about how that one has played to be able to compare it to this one. I would say look on BGG or look to other popular channels for a comparison if that's what you're after, but for me, yeah, I wasn't too quick to think that this is a bad design. So I was like, there has to be something that I'm doing that's wrong for me to have such a low score, if you will. And so I started looking into it, seeing if there were any other solo playthroughs and any strategy on the Discord or BGG or whatever, just to try and get some ideas. And so I looked into it, and then I had a fresh perspective the next time I played, and I managed to do better. And with every subsequent play, I was doing better and better and better. And yeah, there's an upper limit to that. You can only get so much better before it's like, okay, you kind of need like impossible luck at this point to do any better sort of a thing. But I mean, yeah, generally I've been getting better, and I know more about the game, and yeah, I really enjoy it. Again, I like that this is a card drafting game, which means it's going to be a quicker, and the fact that it's also simultaneous play, so you do the draft and then everyone simultaneously does whatever they can with their 6 drafted cards. I really like that. There's like almost no downtime then in this game, unless during that simultaneous phase, like you're waiting for that one player that's like they're doing like 20 different things all in their turn, and they're trying to optimize them as best as they can. I can see where that's potentially a thing, but even then, I I wouldn't even begin to consider it a negative. I mean, I suppose you could have a particularly exceptional game where somebody's doing exceptionally well and the rest are just kind of sitting there waiting, and it's like I can see that, but yeah, here we are. I wouldn't I wouldn't I wouldn't write it down as a negative. That's just me. But yes, I very much enjoy that, and I enjoy that they found a way to make this work solo. Because typically, when you think card drafting, you're like, well, yeah, typically that requires other people to draft, and it's like, no, they have a way to make a solo draft work, and you still have a decent amount of the spiciness with that draft, that tension of like, I want all these cards, but I can't have all these cards. I can only have some of these cards, and so it's like, which cards do I want the most? It's like, do I want these? Do I want those? And you're having to sort all that out. And yeah, speaking of that solo mode, then I very much appreciate that it is here, and that's allowed me to play this a fair bit of times. And again, going back to it, I like that it is so quick. I'm able to get it to the table more often because it is quick, and it is soloable and all of that. And yeah, I also do want to play it more multiplayer though, because I think there's more to gain from that experience. I'd quite frankly would love to see a full 5-player game of this. I'd be very curious what the draft looks like in that regard. That could be rather interesting, but getting 5 people who know what they're doing, that can be a bit of a challenge. But no, I very much enjoy that. I very much enjoyed the resource management of it all, because having to figure out, well, which cards do I keep and not keep, and how do I maximize my resources to be able to do all the things that I want to do, having to deal with all that delicious tension. It is, yeah, very much a difficult thing that, yeah, I very much appreciate. And that's the thing, like, I know one of the things that I very likely did the first time I played it is I got wide-eyed. I saw, like, one of these ships, and I was like, oh, look, here's a ship worth 14 points. And I was like, I bet I can build that. And I took the steps necessary to be able to build it. And yeah, that was early on, and I had very little to show for it after the fact. It's like, yeah, it's a good card, but you just gotta time it right. You gotta know when to build it. And I don't think I knew when to build it. And so it's like I focused on it when I should have been focused on smaller ships and what have you. And so that's the thing. Like, that's recognizing that is an important aspect of this game. Knowing like which ships are good to build early on and get those early game benefits versus the ones you build later on for the late game benefits, or end game, if you will. And knowing which buildings are good to build and when and things like that. And yeah, I love every bit of it. And then having to compete on those faction tracks. Well, I guess not faction tracks, pardon me, but the tracks in general. I like that aspect of it. Even in the solo mode, when you're having to compete against the solo player, it is. I like it. At the difficulty I'm playing, though, it's not always the most tension-filled, but still, just knowing how the solo scores, if you will, how the Automa AI, whatever you want to call it, how that scores, yeah, you're still having to do decently enough. It's not like it's so easy that you can just sit back and relax kind of a thing. No, there's still very much tension. You're still having to earn all the points that you're getting. Yeah, but it's not even the hardest that it can be, because I like that they have these nemesis cards that you can mix in that really spices up the difficulty, which is I'm not at a point where I feel comfortable using any of those yet, but yeah. But yeah, I very much enjoy all that it's doing, and then yeah. again, like I said, it's 5 easy rounds. The box says 60 minutes. I appreciate that. It is pretty much on the mark with those 60 minutes. And I know some people like to complain about the time it's printed on boxes. I think this is fairly accurate no matter what. That being said, I personally would be a defender of the box times printed on boxes, but that's just me. I've done a lot of playtesting over the years, and I could say a thing or two about that, but that's another video for another time. At any rate, if you've ever read any of my reviews, then you'll know one thing about me. I am terrible at ranking things. I am terrible at giving things a number. Like, what is this out of 10? Is this a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 10 out of 10? I mean, for some games, I know absolutely. Like, some of the games in my top 10 are like, yeah, 10 out of 10. It's a non-question, if you will. But for other stuff, I don't know. How do I separate this? Is this an 8? Is this a 9? I don't know. And like, am I basing it on what BGG says is a 10, or am I basing it on what I would say is a 10 out of 10? It's like, it's a thing I'm notably terrible at. And if you're expecting a big number, you're not going to get that from me. I apologize. But what you will get out of me is whether I recommend this game or not. Would I say check it out or pass or some variation thereof? I can at least do that much. I mean, give me a little bit of credit here. So yeah, for me, with the Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, I can't strictly speak to how it compares to the original version, but regardless of that, this is a game that I highly recommend. I like that what it's doing, that unlike its other heavier Euro brethren, that can take upwards of 2 to 3 hours depending on the group and play and whether or not you're tossing in expansions and all that fun stuff. Yeah, I like that this is a solid 60 minutes. You know what you're getting yourself into. You're in, you're out, and then you're on to the next game, and I like it. And that's good. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is a filler game, but for me, it's very much something like, oh, we've played, say, Paladins of the West Kingdom, and now we need something a little lighter. This would fit the bill before we hop into, say, like Scholars of the South Tigers, if you will. So, yeah, that's for me. That's my recommendation, that you absolutely check it out given the chance. I do know that as of the time of the recording, it is still actively fulfilling the Kickstarter backers and hasn't quite hit retail yet, but that should be within the next month or so. You should start seeing them in store shelves. That being said, for me and my reviews, when I do written reviews, I always like to end them with a quotable bit. That way, if a publisher ever happens to read my review and like it and want to share it, they can just take that quotable bit there and slap it on any marketing materials they might want to put out there. Like, hey, here's somebody who really likes the game, and here's what they think. You see it all the time in Kickstarter campaigns and otherwise. I don't think anyone's ever used one of my reviews in that way, but there's a first time for everything. So that being said, pardon me, I have it written down here. I'm going to share that quotable bit with you. I wanted to write it down to make sure that I'm getting it as accurately as can be. So, with that being said, for me, Shipwrights of the North Sea is this delightful blend of card drafting, resource management, and engine building. Played over 5 straightforward rounds, this game offers some delicious tension that has you constantly weighing every single decision in a good way. In the end, you are left with an interesting experience that I can't help but highly recommend. That's going to do it for this video. If you had a chance to play this game, let me know in the comments below what you think. And if not, if you haven't had a chance to play it, let me know if you're interested in checking it out. Have you played the original? What do you think of that one? Are you excited for this one coming out? Ready to give it a shot? That said, until the next video, thanks for watching.